Okay, we'll get started in a couple minutes. Maybe help me do a sound check. Folks online, you can hear me okay? Great, good to know. And these opening minutes, while people are gathering, it's just nice to take the time and feel like you're gathering, especially those of you online. As I often say, it's easy to feel anonymous when we're coming in via Zoom. So do what you can to realize that we're gathering with other actual human beings. Feel a little gratitude that we have this virtual space where we can do that. Do what you need to do so you have a comfortable sitting space for yourself. Supports ease in the body, alertness. And also while we're settling in, just want to offer my thanks to the very large group of volunteers that do so much tech work for the center, including getting all of our videos and audios up on dharmaseed.org, the audios and the videos up on Common Ground's YouTube channel so that people can listen or watch later. And we have Charlie doing tech in the room. Gabe Keller Flores, our operations manager, came over to help. And we have Pietro hosting the in-person gathering at Common Ground City Center in Minneapolis. And you might notice I'm in a different place. I'm out in the Pacific Northwest under big trees at Cloud Mountain Retreat Center, leading a retreat with Shelley Graff. It's really nice to be out here. We have a group of about 45 meditators on retreat. But I have some time. This is dinner time here on the West Coast, so can join in for the Monday night Buddhist studies. So let's go ahead and chant the refuges as we often do at the beginning of our Buddhist studies class. I have the words there in the chat for those of you online in case you need the words. I'm trusting that those of you in the room at the city center know, otherwise just follow along as best you can. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sanghang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. And settling in to our meditation posture now. Feeling at home in the body. Feeling at home in all that's moving through the six sense gates. Sounds are moving. Sights, visual form, also moving. Physical sensations, moving, coming and going. And to some degree, smells and tastes, also moving. And of course, all the mental activities of thought, emotion, mental images. What a swirl these activities of body and mind now. And quite naturally, the heart, the mind is sensitive to what's moving. So we're coming home, we're having a more honest, truthful relationship to the exposure, the natural exposure, constant sense impingement through all the ways that the heart, the mind is sensitive. The five physical senses and the sensitivity to mental activities. And every moment of sense contact, sense experience, to a greater or lesser degree, every moment will trigger to some degree the hindrances, will trigger wanting. There's a pleasant experience, will be a wanting to hold on, even if we imagine a pleasant experience. Quite naturally, wanting will arise. Or if something unpleasant were to show up as a visual form, as a sound, as a sensation, as a mental image, aversion naturally arises, not wanting. Sometimes the energy is low, the mind gets identified with the heaviness of body, the heaviness of mind, the dullness of body or mind, or restlessness, or doubt, the spinning of doubt and uncertainty, the mind in a sense chasing its tail. So these are the five hindrances that the Buddha identified as the common ways that the stability of present moment awareness is hindered, interrupted. And this is quite natural. We don't need to judge ourselves when we notice the hindrances. Instead, we want to be inspired, knowing that we live in a lawful universe. How are these hindrances being fed in this moment, strengthened in this moment? How can these hindrances be weakened, starved? Simply by what we're paying attention to, how we're paying attention. So it really matters. And there are many opportunities to learn this conditional nature, how it is that the hindrances, the torments, qualities of mind that torment us, how those grow, become stronger, and eventually can dominate the mind for periods of time. and how those tormenting storms diminish and fall away. And this learning moves us beyond helplessness. Often we feel helpless when those mental torments, those mental afflictions push us around. So the Buddha is saying that whether we know it or not, in every moment, we're feeding or starving these afflictive qualities of mind. So, for example, now, if you're feeling some physical discomfort in the sitting, how you look at those painful sensations matters. There's a way of paying attention to physical pain in a way that feeds the aversion. And there's a way of paying attention to the moment that weakens the aversion, that develops loving kindness, a more tender, forgiving, patient way of being with whatever is moving in our experience. And we learn from seeing what doesn't help, like how we're feeding the hindrances. And we learn when we are weakening and going beyond the hindrances. So let's continue now in silence, and we're looking for the ordinary arising of aversion, the ordinary arising of greed, wanting something to happen, the ordinary arising of too little energy, dullness, or too much energy, restlessness, and the arising of doubt, that spinning kind of doubt. And then just be happy to see the hindrance when it's there, because it's a beautiful opportunity to learn whether the mind is feeding it and it's getting us to be a stronger, more tormenting quality, or it's getting weaker. The point is the learning. We're learning about the lawfulness, how to take care of this mind, this heart, how to weaken the hindrances by learning what strengthens them and what causes them to pass away. So let's continue now in silence. Simply recognizing what the mind is knowing, what's being sensed in the body, what's being sensed in the mind. And if there's some disturbance, then allow that to be the object of awareness. Oh, and just see if you can intuit or sense. You can even ask, is the mind wanting something? Is the mind wanting to get rid of something? And of course, sometimes hindrances come in pairs. There's restlessness and aversion to the restlessness, or dullness and aversion to the dullness. And you can ask, can I allow this hindrance, this drama, this torment to reveal itself in the space of awareness? And it really helps to be willing to feel whatever the underlying feeling is with the drama, whatever it might be. So when we're practicing, we're cultivating the sense that what the mind is paying attention to and how the mind is paying attention. We're cultivating the sense that this is a potent intervention in how things unfold. So it really leads to an empowered relationship with the present moment, that it really matters what the mind is paying attention to and how it's relating. So we always have this opportunity to grow the wholesome and to weaken the unwholesome, to grow the qualities that are pleasant in that wholesome sense, and to weaken the qualities that are unpleasant because they're unwholesome. And it doesn't mean we know how to do this, but it means that we have everything we need to learn how to water, how to feed the wholesome, and how to weaken and starve the unwholesome qualities. And even if we keep making mistakes and we're feeding what is unwholesome, getting caught in those negative vortexes, feedback loops, that's okay, because we'll learn this is not the way. This is not helpful. This adds more stress. Good to know. Happy to see that. That's good learning. So continue to sit for another 5 minutes or so, just seeing how we can, in a very real way, how we can take care of the heart, take care of this life, simply by how we're showing up. And before we end, let's just take a little time and sensing our own growing, hopefully growing confidence that I know I'm learning how to take care of this sensitive heart, that we're gaining the skill that we need to be in a world where all kinds of qualities of mind get triggered unavoidably. But that's okay, because we'll know how not to fall into those vortexes where we're feeding the negative quality of mind, so it becomes a more and more intense drama, cause for real stress and maybe disorientation that leads to unskillful behaviors and more suffering that follows. Because we know we're learning how not to feed these vortexes of greed, of aversion, of dullness, of restlessness, of doubt. This is the proper use of wisdom, right? Wisdom that knows in a very real way, like in a world like the world we live in, that knows how to take care of the sensitive heart, to keep it out of trouble. Simply by knowing what to pay attention to and how to pay attention with what qualities of mind. So when you feel ready, just begin to move your body, stretch a little if you'd like. Good to see everybody. If you came in a little late, I'm coming in from the Pacific Northwest under the big trees here at Cloud Mountain Retreat Center. Really glad to be here leading a retreat with Shelley Graff. Maybe you can hear I'm in the staff room, which is right above the pot room, and they're cleaning the pots from dinner. So maybe it sounds like thunder to you folks online, but hopefully you don't hear it too much. Good. So we have the second week of our 4-week class on the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And you might remember from week 1 last Monday that this fourth foundation is like each of the 4 foundations, the Buddha is asking us to tune in to one aspect of our ongoing experience. And with the fourth foundation, the Buddha is specifically asking us to tune in to the conditional nature of our experience, that things are always in process. That's a very central idea and experience that we're cultivating, to notice, to sense the conditional nature. There's nothing ever static. So whatever mood, whatever quality of mind, heart, or body that I'm experiencing, whatever world we're experiencing, it's in process. It's already changing. And we're participating in that change. We're not helpless. And this is meant to be inspiring news, good news, right? I mean, we may not want the responsibility, but it means we're not helpless. There was this email I appreciate Tom sent in this last week. Tom is doing the Buddhist Studies class with us. And I'll just read what he wrote. Sometimes it can feel as though practice implies resigning oneself to an unsatisfactory situation, letting the situation be what it is. If I'm working in a space that lacks integrity, I need to resign myself to that lack of integrity. From my understanding, intention makes a big difference. Resignation suggests a lack of response, whereas practice in present moment awareness means fully opening to how it is, which then allows a response. Am I on the right track with this? Yeah, I think so. And it's true that that quality of resignation it can be a shadow in Buddhist practice, because in order to have an appropriate response, like in order to learn when I'm feeding the hindrance, when I'm feeding an unwholesome quality in the mind, making it stronger, getting intoxicated in that vortex where the way, like let's use greed, and let's say I want something nice, like some good food, and the way my mind looks at that desire and the mental images related to that desire, right? And the possibilities of getting what I want, like thinking about the refrigerator or thinking about what's in the refrigerator or think about how close the store is where I have to drive to get what I want, right? That kind of thinking feeds the desiring. And then the desiring feeds that kind of thinking and imagining. And that thinking and imagining feeds the desire. And that's that feedback loop, that vortex of craving, of wanting. It works very similarly for aversion. If I'm looking at the thing that scares me, or I noticed this during the sit we just had together. I mentioned, there's a lot of sounds right underneath me from the pot room where they're washing pots. And, initially I'd hear that clanging and banging, and I would think, this isn't good. Here I am leading a guided meditation, and there's all this noise, and it's probably getting picked up, and people are going to be mad at me or disappointed, or, all that speculation and thinking. And the thinking leads me to listen to those sounds and be disturbed by those sounds, which leads to more thinking. And it could be a real vortex, a aversive vortex and unpleasant, and it distorts the mind. The mind starts to think that the sound is bigger than what it is, more of a problem than what it is, because the mind is diluted. It's caught in that vortex. But there's other ways I can be paying attention in the moment. Like I can notice the relative quiet, instead of the relative noise. Or I can remember there's a group of 45 people living harmoniously, taking turns doing different jobs. Some people are chopping vegetables, some people are cleaning bathrooms, and some people are scrubbing pots after the meals. And in that way, we're all taking care of each other, and it's a really sweet thing, right? I can notice that truth of the clanging. Like, oh yeah, it's people volunteering to do some of these jobs so that the retreat center can run economically. How sweet is that? And that evokes a kind of loving kindness. Like, so now the sound represents in my heart like people doing good things, taking care of each other. Oh, that's really nice. And it's nice even to share that energy maybe with the rest of you, you know? Or maybe for you, if you actually can hear those sounds, you get your own practice that I'm describing. You're dealing with the irritation and finding other things to pay attention to so that we don't feed that negative vortex. So it's really just the opposite of resignation, that in order to learn what feeds and what starves these different torments, negative patterns in the mind, we have to get close. Like Joseph Goldstein gives really nice 4 instructions around working with the hindrances. First, you have to recognize, oh, look at that, my mind's aversive. There's something happening. It's a sound, it's a sight, it's a sensation, it's a thought, it's a smell, it's a taste. It's got to be one of those 6 things. There's a sense experience, and it's triggering aversion, and the mind is to some degree identified with it. That's the first step. We have to acknowledge that one of these 5 hindrances has arisen, and it's like this. And then the next step Joseph suggests is remind yourself you don't have to act out. I don't have to do the first impulse. And for me, like hearing those sounds, the first impulse is no, no, I don't want it noisy. I want it quiet, right? So it's like a energetic bodily freezing up, as if somehow me getting tense is going to quiet the pots below me. Of course, it doesn't. But that's delusion. That's, the mind justifies that tension because it's deluded. it thinks that tense response is somehow functional. It's not functional. It's just a cause for stress here and now in the body and the mind, right? So we, instead of acting out, we get interested, we relax, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to the irritant. In this case, the thing that's triggering aversion. Can I just let the sounds be the sounds? Can I allow my heart to be undefended? And my body maybe doesn't need to tense up. Can I just relax and let this irritant be what it is? And then, right with that, not acting out, is this third instruction from Joseph: don't believe the thought that there's no way to practice right now. Because what comes into the mind for these things that are triggering for us is, I can't practice until this goes away. So let me figure out how to make this go away. I'm going to walk downstairs and tell those people to be quiet or something like that, you know. Uh, but we want to practice not believing that thought. It's like we can cultivate the instruction or the thought. Every moment is a perfectly fine moment for practice. Even the really intensely difficult moments, or the intensely beautiful moments, or the intensely neutral, boring moments, are perfect for practice. We don't need a different moment ever, ever, than the one we have. So we got to really take this in, this third instruction that we're getting from Joseph, but it's just common sense. And that is, there's always something to learn with this moment that's arising for me, right? Because this moment is going to be triggering, if it's really a neutral, ordinary moment, it's going to be triggering the unhelpful response of ignoring it. I'm ignoring the moment because it's neutral. It's not clearly pleasant. It's not clearly unpleasant. So I'm ignoring it. And that's stressful, to be disconnecting because the mind concludes the moment is boring. It's not worthy of real interest, right? That's a stressful, suffering response. And then, we know what we do with pleasant experience. We crave it, we want to hold it, we want to own it. And we know what we do with unpleasant experience. We want to get rid of it. We want to blame somebody. We want to run away from it, deny it, distract ourselves from it, all of which is stressful. So, and every moment is going to be one of those three things. It's going to be relatively pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. And perfectly great moments for practice. So this instinct that it really matters how we relate, and it really comes down to the intention, like with what intention am I relating? Am I relating with the intention to get rid of the aversive experience? I mean, of course, sometimes it is appropriate to go downstairs and tell people to be quiet or ask them nicely if they can do it more quietly. But this is one of the reasons we sit still when we meditate. Let's say you have a morning practice and you sit for 30 minutes and you resolve to sit relatively still, not because it's easy to sit relatively still when we're practicing, but because it gives us this opportunity to relate to physical discomfort that inevitably arises when we're sitting with something other than moving the posture. Right? Because then we can really work at how the mind is relating in that moment. What is it paying attention to? How is it paying attention? What other options does the mind have? What else can the mind be paying attention to? Or how else can the mind be paying attention to what it's paying attention? So that we learn, we're just experimenting. What is feeding the aversive vortex, causing more stress, causing more disorientation? What's causing the aversive vortex to quiet down, to fall away, to cease? Oh, and whatever we see, the building up of the painful reaction or the diminishing of the painful reaction, whatever we see is priceless learning. We want to be happy. Like even when how we're relating to physical pain is just making it worse. We're digging the hole deeper. We're getting more tight. Wisdom in the mind is going, good to see. It's painful. This is not what I want to be doing, but it's really good for wisdom to be connecting the dots. So when there's pain in the body, and the mind, because of habit, starts to hate the pain in the body, starts to maybe feel like I'm bad at what I'm doing because my body hurts so much, So some version of self-hatred, or blame it on somebody else, depending on the nature of our painful sensations. Like, who bought this chair? It's so uncomfortable. And so we proliferate with the aversion. And it's really important for wisdom to connect the dots. This is not helping. That's like solid gold spiritual learning. When the mind sees clearly the activity in the mind is making it worse. That's the only thing. What do you think, what do we think actually causes unhelpful habits of mind to get weak? Seeing that they're unhelpful. We have to feel it, see it in our bones. It's not something we can do. I mean, there are a lot of bad habits I have where intellectually I know it's a bad habit, but that doesn't make that bad habit go away. We have to really feel and see it. We have to sense that it's not helping. And we can do this by observing directly in ourselves and also to some degree observing it in others. Oh, yeah, look at that person. They're digging the hole deeper. And it kind of breaks our heart, just that empathetic response, like, oh yeah, that's not the way towards more freedom, more ease in life, is it? Good to see that. So we're learning all the time when the wisdom in the mind has this conditional understanding that I talked about last week. And that's really what's being highlighted in the fourth foundation. And you'll see next week when we move on to the awakening factors, the wholesome qualities of mind, and what strengthens the wholesome, and how the wholesome qualities of mind can get weak when they're not being fed, when they're not being strengthened, like the quality of calm, or the quality of joy, or the quality of tranquility, or the quality of stillness, the quality of balance, equanimity, the quality of interest, and the quality, of course, of mindfulness or awareness. Right? These are the 7 factors that we'll be talking about in weeks 3 and 4. And it's the same thing. So we don't have to wait. So this interest, like this is like the opposite of what Tom was asking about, resignation. Because what we're doing is we're inserting, initially, maybe it's borrowed faith. We're not convinced directly from our own experience, but it makes a lot of sense intellectually. So we borrow this teaching, this instruction from the Buddha, that it really matters how we're paying attention. This is the primary way we change our lives. Moment by moment, what is the mind paying attention to? And with what attitude is it paying attention? And even if we don't have any idea of what's skillful or unskillful, all we have to do is start paying attention to how the mind is relating and what it's paying attention to. And we'll start connecting the dots. Oh, look at that. I'm relating in this way, paying attention to this part of my experience. And look at that. A lot of stress is building up. The body and the mind is getting tight. That's good to know. That's real data about what are the causes for stress. And just in the same way, if we see stress, tension, and the body and the mind, the grip diminishing, and we have a sense of that lawful, like what are the proximate causes for that diminishing, that going away of stress? Solid gold. Oh, yeah, so good to see that. Like right now, like this is a really useful way to build the confidence and that attitude of kindness, that attitude of goodwill. Like we don't need a different moment to begin to realize that I can be relating right now to giving a talk, seeing the computer screen in front of me, feeling my body sitting in this wicker chair. But I can be relating to that in a tender and kind way. And it's like immediately whatever unnecessary tension there is starts to feel better because the mind is here giving the talk, relating to what I'm going to say next, feeling the body sitting in a kind and tender way, simply because I reminded myself that how I'm relating matters. But if I'm here giving the talk, really wanting it to be a good talk, which is craving, really afraid of not doing a good job, which is aversion, I'll have a different experience and I'll see, oh yeah, that tension isn't helping at all. Certainly not helping my clarity, the nimbleness of the talk, right? Okay, good to know. That can be the cause for forgiveness and a little pause and just enough time for some gentle kindness to come in. Like it isn't easy being a human being. It isn't easy in the middle of a retreat having to give a talk on Zoom. Oh, poor me. And then, we see that other vortex, like feeling sorry for ourselves. And notice what that sets in motion. So, whatever our situation is, right in the middle of having duties and responsibilities, doing stuff, right? We don't have to be on retreat or be in a refined environment. We can be interested in this feeding and starving. That's the image the Buddha used, 2,600 years ago. Use that if you want, but it's just the same as strengthening or weakening. And that's true for the wholesome, the awakening factors that we're going to be talking about, as it is for the unwholesome, the five hindrances, or any of the lists of unskillful, unwholesome qualities of mind that we see in our heart. We're always feeding, we're always starving, we're always affecting the habits of our mind. Drop by drop, we're either increasing, strengthening unhelpful, unskillful qualities of mind, or we're strengthening skillful qualities of mind. And the question is, can we learn to be interested in that conditional nature so that we're really paying attention? So I thought in the small groups tonight, one of the things that would be useful to talk about is this feeding and starving that you've seen in your own life. And I'll just read how the Buddha talks about this from some of the suttas where he's talking about the hindrances. Because with each of these five hindrances that we've talked about, wanting, not wanting, too little energy, dullness, too much energy, restlessness, and doubting. Now remember, there are skillful qualities of doubt, like just kind of not coming to a conclusion about something. Like, I'm not sure, I'm going to keep paying attention. That's a skillful. So here we're talking about an unskillful doubt, where the mind is spinning in a way that doesn't lead to any sort of clarification. The spinning leads to more spinning. So here's what the Buddha says. First, I'll just mention that he talks about the hindrances in terms of five competencies. We need to know, like I'll just use wanting as the first hindrance to describe this. We need to know in this heart right now, in my mind right now, is there wanting? That's the first skill. Like, can we notice it? Can we recognize it when there's wanting? Can we notice the mind when there's not wanting? That's the second skill, right? Do we know the mind when there's no wanting? Oh, this is a mind without wanting. I'm content. The mind doesn't have that sort of leaning into wanting something or that burning of desire. It's free in this moment of that burning. Or no, there's that burning of desire. So those are the first two skills. Those are the two easy. Then the third skill is a practitioner knows that it's absent. And then the Buddha says, and one knows how unarisen wanting comes to arise. So we're going and we know no wanting in the mind. This is a mind that's relatively content. And then all of a sudden, the mind sees something, takes the bait, and now there's some wanting. The mind is thinking about wanting to get, how nice it would be to have. What can I do to get this? How pleasant it will be once I get it, right? So how did that come to be? Because it wasn't just a random arising of desire or wanting. There was a trigger, there was a proximate cause. Can we see? What did the mind pay attention to? How did the mind pay attention? So that's a particular learning to see how it is that greed, wanting shows up. And then once there is greed, how is it that it goes away? What does the mind see that makes it go away? And we'll talk about this in just a moment. And the last thing is, how does the mind relate that causes it to prevent wanting to show up? Like what gives our heart some immunity from wanting getting triggered? How do we move through our day with some immunity to craving, to wanting? What is that? What is the mind keeping in mind that gives me some immunity from wanting? Because, some days we're not good for anything. We're just a desiring monster. It's one thing and then another thing, and it's just like, but other days, not so much. So, what's the difference? What is there in the mind when we have some immunity from wanting? So, these 5 learnings are there for aversion, for dullness, for too much energy, restlessness, and for doubt. We notice when it's there, we notice when it's not there. We notice what's there when it arises. We notice what's there in the mind, what the mind is doing when it ceases. And we notice what's there when the mind has some immunity, that it has some ability to remain free of that hindrance. So what is the mind doing when it's not tormented by doubt, not tormented by dullness or sleepiness? What is it doing? So here's what the Buddha says. I'll give you some of the hints that the Buddha gives us for each of the 5. So this is for wanting. The Buddha says, I know of no single thing of such power to cause the arising of sense desire if it's not already arisen, or if arisen, to cause its development and increase as the thought of beauty. In one who gives careless attention to the thought of beauty, sense desire, if not already arisen, arises, or if already there, is liable to increase and expand. So let's just think about something like, let's say we meet or interact with somebody we find attractive, right? And when I do what with my attention and with what attitude, does the attraction and the obsession with that person, the attraction to that person increase? So maybe it's a physical attribute of that person that is captivating for the mind. Or maybe it's a personality attribute of that person. Or maybe they have a lot of money, or whatever it is. But when the mind attends to that with a mind that is discontent, looking for pleasure, right? Then the obsessive, the attraction, the craving increases, right? So we see that keeping in mind what the mind finds beautiful is what feeds the desiring, the craving, the wanting. Now, this is a little provocative, but the opposite is the thought of non-beauty, if we keep that in mind. So again, just using the person, there are ways, like even a person we find really attractive for a number of reasons, we can also bring to mind other aspects, which is just naturally true. Like it isn't easy being in a committed, intimate relationship with another human being, because it's true, So we can bring all that to mind. Or, we might be fascinated with something relatively superficial, like, the shape of the kind of haircut that they have, or the way their eyes are. But we could kind of just bring to mind, it's just hair. It's just eyeballs. Do you know what I mean? Like these things that are alluring for us, there's a way of realizing that skin is just skin, eyes are just eyes, shape is just shape. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like breaking the spell. And it's not about cultivating aversion. It's just, in a way, it's like expanding the truth of what we're seeing and feeling. So that when we're desiring, it's like the mind has this tunnel vision and it's seeing in just a way that feeds the craving. But if we widen that tunnel, so we're just seeing the truth in a more dispassionate, honest way, it's just, it falls away. And it's not like we're saying, well, I'm not going to get together with that person. I'm not going to ask them out on a date, or I'm not going to ask them to live with me for the rest of my life. We may or we may not, but we won't be spellbound. Actually, it's more, if you end up in a relationship with that person, it's more likely to unfold in a skillful way, in a lasting way, because we're not sort of enchanted with this allure of what desire creates. You know how it is that when we're cultivating a desire of something, it just totally obsesses the mind. It makes it seem so much bigger than it is. I remember a story, a friend of mine, way back in the 80s, I was a school teacher and in the early 90s as well. And a teacher that I was a special ed teacher, and a classroom I'd go into, the second grade teacher, there was a guy, a man teacher, and he had just, his family guys had a couple kids, and his partner, his wife, allowed him to buy a motorcycle, one of those really souped up motorcycles where you're sort of lying on it. And he was so happy. And then a couple months after he got this motorcycle, he showed me this magazine that was all about motorcycles. I don't know the first thing about motorcycles. And he showed me another motorcycle. And, this person doesn't practice at all. And he was like astounded. He said, I've got this motorcycle. I've wanted it for so long, but now I find I want this other motorcycle, right? And his mind was obsessed with like having this other motorcycle. And it's like a perfect example, like, because he kept, why are you looking at a magazine of motorcycles when you have a motorcycle, right? It's like, what are we doing with our attention? And what is that setting in motion? So I want to go on before we break into small groups for the other four. So, and you can just imagine for yourself, like when there's, what does the mind pay attention to feed the aversion? So the Buddha says, I know of no other single thing of such power to cause the arising of ill will, aversion, if not already arisen, or if arisen to cause the development and increase of ill will, as the thought of dislike, right? So we're paying attention in a way that replicates, that reestablishes the thought of not liking. And that's that vortex I was talking about where we look at something that triggers the thought, yuck, get that away from me. And then that thought, get that away from me, causes us to pay attention to the thing that triggers the thought, get that away from me. And it becomes this vortex, this feedback loop. In one who gives careless attention to the thought of dislike, ill will, if not already arisen, arises, if already arisen, is liable to increase and expand. And the opposite of this is loving kindness. And remember, it doesn't have to be necessarily loving kindness for the thing. Like the example I gave earlier, I didn't have loving kindness for the loud sounds. But I could have loving kindness for being at a retreat center where everyone is taking care of themselves. And that means that after feeding 45 people, there's going to be sounds in the dish room because people got to move big things and they're metal and they make sound. And it's like the sound of harmony, like of people taking care of each other. Excuse the sun setting, but it should go away in just a moment. Let's see if that helps a little. No? Yeah, that helps. Good. And then the third hindrance, dullness, maybe you can guess. The Buddha says, I know of no other single thing of such power to cause the arising of sloth and torpor, mental and physical heaviness and dullness, if not already arisen, or if arisen to cause its development and increase, as regret, drowsiness, and the heaviness of body, the heaviness of mind, and paying attention to being full with food. So it's paying attention to these things. And basically, we'll learn ourselves. Like when I pay attention to this, the mind is more dull, the body is more heavy. Okay, good to know. And the opposite is paying attention to places in the moment that allows for exertion, that allows for brightness. We know that, like when we're dead to the world, really heavy of body and mind, just getting up and doing something is enlivening. Believing the thought that I'm too tired to do something causes us to be too tired to do something. Thinking, well, I can pay attention to this, I can be interested in that, right? And so, like in the context of a meditation period, we can ask the mind to do a little bit more. Honey, can you notice that breath coming in? Can you notice the middle of the in breath? Can you notice that last moment of the in breath? Can you notice that little pause? Can you notice the beginning of the out breath, the sensations of that? How about the middle of the out breath? Can you catch that? So that's a lot of work for the mind, for attention, but that will increase the brightness in the mind, asking the mind to do stuff in line with what we're doing. So if we're meditating, asking the mind to connect to the present moment in a clear way, in a way that where the mind can really acknowledge, oh, this is being known or this is being felt, not in a superficial way. That work itself is what overcomes dullness. Experiment with this. It really matters. Just like being interested in sitting up in an alert way can be brightening. Opening the eyes when you're meditating can be brightening, like, wow, light, seeing, right? There's just more for the mind to be interested in. Hearing, notice all six sense gates. Oh, there's hearing being known, there's seeing being known. Even when there's no strong smells, still smelling is being known. Tasting, even when I'm not eating food, there's always taste. It's just really neutral when it's just saliva in our mouths. But we can notice the taste of that, right? And all of that work to connect with our experience brightens the mind. And then restlessness, you can probably guess, right? Paying attention to things that are agitating is not what we want to do. That feeds the restlessness. If we're feeling like the EBGBs, a lot of nervous energy, and we keep noticing the nervous energy, like sometimes when we're sitting and we have a lot of the fidgety nervous energy and we keep fixating on it, it can almost feel like we're going to explode with restlessness. But we could notice something that is soothing, that is not triggering the restlessness. So maybe the background ambient sounds in the room is soothing, or maybe the rhythm of the breath, or maybe some just neutral sensation, like if your hands are sitting together in your lap and one thumb is on top of the other thumb, you just feel that simple contact of one thumb touching the other thumb. Because for most of us, that won't be an agitating sense experience to sense. It will be calming. Oh, it's just touch. And finally, for doubt, here's what the Buddha says: I know of no other single thing of such power to cause the arising of doubt, if not already arisen, or if arisen to cause its development and increase, as careless attention. The reason we can chase our tail spinning in a way that's unproductive, obsessing, worrying in a way that's unproductive, is we're not really connected to the moment. It's careless attention. And what resolves doubt is careful attention. And we can prompt that by just asking ourselves, honey, what's being known now? What are you feeling in your body right now? So the next time you're caught in doubt, just connect with some simple things. Like a lot of wise people just go for a walk and just feel the body walking and realize, yeah, physicality of walking is being known. No doubt there. Then you can expand it. Seeing, you're walking and you're just seeing the visual field. Any doubt about seeing what I'm seeing? No. This is just seeing my neighborhood, seeing the houses, seeing the sidewalk, seeing the trees. Seeing is being known. And then open to hearing. It's just hearing. So when we just connect with the elements of the present moment, doubt would disappear. We just need to bring some real care to connecting with experience. And that interrupts the doubt cycle. And this is all territory we can learn directly. So in our small groups, which we'll do next, just anything that seems relevant, of course, is important to share. But in particular, what hindrances have you noticed showing up in daily life and in your meditation practice? And what have you learned about what feeds, strengthens those hindrances, make them edifices in your mind, and what weakens and causes them to go away? What have you learned about their conditional nature? That would be great to share. And these small groups, if you haven't been in these small groups before, they're considered to be sacred little gatherings for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Each person gets a couple minutes to share. The rest of the group, the other 2 or 3 people, just receptive. You don't ask questions. You're just letting the person have their 2 to 3 minutes. Even if they pause, that's totally fine. Just hold the silence together. After each person has 2 or 3 minutes, you go to the next. Till everybody has a chance. Of course, it's always okay to pass. And then some time for open discussion. That's where you can ask clarifying questions. And as you know, everybody joins the small groups. It's part of the Buddhist studies. So Pietro is there for the people in the building. He'll divide you into groups of 3 or 4. I'll go ahead and organize groups for those of you here on Zoom. I'll call you back at 9 o'clock Central Time. We'll all end together.